The morning at the regional airport in Texas was deceptively ordinary. Sunlight gleamed off the tarmac, and a gentle breeze rustled the flags lining the runway. Passengers bustled through the terminal, checking boarding passes and chatting casually. Children tugged at their parents' hands, while business travelers tapped on laptops or scrolled on phones. To the casual observer, it was a standard, uneventful day. Inside the small terminal, Collins moved with calm precision. She had arrived early, as always, preferring to complete pre-flight checks without distractions. At 29, exuded a quiet confidence that had become second nature after years of disciplined training. She was a civilian pilot now, but a hidden history lingered beneath her unassuming demeanor, a past steeped in elite military aviation. Had trained with top-secret F-22 squadrons, mastering maneuvers that few could even imagine. Yet in this world of civilian aviation, no one would suspect her extraordinary skills. Her co-pilot Mark was already waiting in the cockpit, reviewing flight plans and cross-checking instruments. He was seasoned, affable, and entirely unaware of his full capabilities. The two shared light conversation as they prepared the aircraft. "Smooth skis today," Mark said with a grin. Responded with a calm nod, her mind partly elsewhere, running through checklists, contingency procedures, and the mental drills she had memorized from her military days. Every gauge, dial, and lever had a story, a purpose, and his fingers brushed them with confident familiarity. Passengers began boarding, smiled politely as she greeted them, maintaining the serene persona expected of a civilian pilot. Among them were families, solo travelers, and a handful of. Everyone assumed that this flight would be ordinary. No one could guess that life had once revolved around the most advanced fighter jets in the world, flying missions that demanded instinct, precision, and nerves of steel. She concealed her past for a reason. It was a life that didn't belong in the ordinary world she had chosen, yet its lessons remained indelibly imprinted in her mind. As the last passengers settled into their seats, eyes flicked to Mark. "Ready for takeoff?" she asked, her voice steady and reassuring. He nodded, oblivious to the unspoken tension simmering beneath her composed exterior. The engines roared to life, a familiar symphony of controlled power, and ran through her final instrument checks. Each gauge, each control surface, responded precisely as expected. Everything appeared normal, routine, and yet felt that subtle whisper of anticipation, the unshakable sense that the day would not remain ordinary for long. The plane taxied down the runway and its focus sharpened. Her co-pilot chatted lightly with passengers over the intercom, whilst mind moved through emergency scenarios, visualizing potential malfunctions, sudden turbulence, or medical emergencies. She didn't dwell on fear. She had learned long ago that panic was the enemy of control. Instead, she prepared, calculated, and waited as one might wait for an opponent in a chess match. Her fingers hovered over controls, ready to act, while the plane lifted gracefully into the sky. Above, the Texas plains stretched endlessly, dotted with rivers, highways, and distant towns. The sky was a deep, unbroken blue, deceptively serene. His heart remained steady, her breathing controlled. The passengers chatted, some peering out windows at the scenery below. They could not imagine the reservoir of skill and calm that lay in the cockpit, a hidden power waiting to be called upon. For the ordinary morning flight was already beginning to change, though the passengers had yet to notice. As the aircraft climbed toward cruising altitude, allowed herself a brief reflection. Flying had always been her sanctuary, a place where focus, precision, and instinct converged. She was acutely aware of the responsibility resting on her shoulders, and though today seemed ordinary, something deep within her recognized the approaching challenge. Somewhere in the clouds, fate had begun its subtle work, nudging the course of an otherwise mundane day toward the extraordinary. And trained for the impossible was ready, even if no one else knew it yet. 30,000 feet above the Texas plains, the hum of the engines filled the cabin like a constant heartbeat. Collins monitored every instrument, her eyes flicking between altimeter, airspeed, and navigation systems. The flight had started smoothly, even peacefully, but a subtle tension hummed beneath the surface. She sensed it before anyone else did, a disturbance, a shift in the rhythm of routine. Then it happened. Mark, her co-pilot, gripped his chest sharply, his face pale and slumped forward. A startled gasp echoed through the cockpit. His mind clicked instantly, a precise mental sequence triggered by years of training. She reached for the controls as Mark collapsed further, unconscious and unresponsive. Panic erupted in the cabin. Passengers cried out in confusion. The intercom filled with alarmed voices. His own pulse surged, but her face remained calm, a mask of collected authority. Everyone remained seated. We are experiencing a minor medical emergency. Please stay calm, she said firmly, her voice carrying a tone that brooked no argument. The passengers, clinging to the edges of their seats, eyes wide with terror. Ground control crackled over the radio, urgency threading every word. Flight 329, confirm status. We're seeing irregular readings from your co-pilot. His fingers moved swiftly, aligning controls, stabilizing the plane. He's unconscious, she replied calmly. I'm handling it. The words sounded measured, almost ordinary, but his mind was anything but calm. Every procedure she had memorized in simulators, emergency landings, manual overrides, engine malfunctions, flashed through her consciousness. Her hands danced over the instruments with precise rhythm, toggling switches, adjusting flaps, recalibrating the autopilot. The aircraft responded smoothly under her touch, as if acknowledging the hands of someone who had once flown the fastest jets in the world. Passengers whispered among themselves, fear turning to awe as they watched work. She moved from console to console, assessing the co-pilot, stabilizing altitude and calculating every possible contingency. In her mind, she replayed countless emergency drills, scenarios that had once been purely hypothetical, now coming alive in vivid urgency. The turbulence outside worsened, clouds rolling past in violent swirls, adjusted pitch and speed holding the plane steady. The world below looked impossibly distant, a patchwork of highways, rivers, and fields rushing past. Every second counted. She glanced at Mark, checking his vitals, calculating the fastest descent path, and coordinating with ground control simultaneously. Air traffic controllers expressed doubt over the radio. Flight 329, are you sure you can handle this alone? We have no protocol. Instructions received, interrupted, her tone unwavering. I am following procedure. Please clear the runway for emergency landing. I will guide the aircraft. Her voice had an edge of command that silenced hesitation. Inside the cockpit, his mind became a chessboard of possibilities. Every instrument, every warning light, every subtle vibration was data she could interpret. She was no longer just a civilian pilot. She had transformed into a force of precision honed over years of elite military training. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Her eyes scanned the horizon, clouds streaking past in a blur, her hands steady on the yoke. Every maneuver she executed was deliberate, flaps extended, speed adjusted, altitude recalibrated, all under pressure that would crush most pilots. She was alone in her responsibility, and she embraced it fully. Passengers, still frightened, began to sense a strange calm emanating from her. Her composure gave them hope, though they had no idea of the depth of her skill. Felt the weight of the moment, aware that the next minutes could mean life or death, not just for Mark, but for everyone aboard. The plane steadied, cutting through turbulence like a blade. Whispered a silent promise. She would not let this flight end in disaster. Somewhere in the vast expanse of sky, a test awaited her, one that would reveal not just her training, but the extraordinary courage hidden behind her civilian guise. As the plane leveled out, Collins allowed herself only a fraction of a second to process the magnitude of the situation. Mark remained slumped over, unresponsive, leaving her alone to manage a commercial aircraft at 30,000 feet. She inhaled deeply, grounding herself. Panic was useless. Precision and control were all that mattered. Every fiber of her being, trained in the elite corridors of the Air Force, snapped into action. Memories of her past flashed unbidden. Test flights in F-22s, emergency simulations, high-stakes exercises with the nation's most advanced jets. She had executed maneuvers that few could even imagine. Those years had demanded more than skill. They demanded instinct, clarity under pressure, and a refusal to yield to fear. Now, those skills were the only shield against disaster. Her fingers moved fluidly across the cockpit controls. The autopilot was engaged, but she monitored every system, adjusting thrust, fine-tuning the plane's trajectory, and compensating for turbulence. Every adjustment was calculated, almost subconscious, the product of years spent mastering aircraft that could outmaneuver nearly anything in the sky. She recalled the tactical drills, the split-second decisions, the high-G maneuvers where even a fraction of hesitation meant failure. It all became relevant now, in the most real sense she had ever faced. Passengers continued to whisper anxiously. Some pressed faces to the windows, watching clouds whip past. Others gripped the armrests, eyes wide, listening to calm instructions. "Keep your fastened. Follow my lead. We will land safely," she said, her tone confident, unwavering. No hint of doubt or fear escaped her voice, though her mind was calculating dozens of scenarios at once. She monitored Mark, checking for vital signs. His pulse was weak but steady. New immediate medical attention awaited him, but first she had to bring everyone safely to the ground. She reached for the radio, coordinating with air traffic control, conveying precise altitude, heading, and speed. Controllers were stunned. They had never heard a civilian provide such technical detail under pressure. His voice carried authority, blending calm reassurance with undeniable expertise. A flicker of turbulence jolted the aircraft. Hands adjusted controls instantly, compensating for wind shear. Her mind moved faster than the human eye could follow, anticipating the plane's response to each subtle shift. Years of military experience had conditioned her to read instruments, to interpret data almost intuitively, and to execute maneuvers that would seem impossible to ordinary pilots. This was no simulation. Every decision carried immediate consequences. She thought briefly of her squadron, those long-ago missions, and the mentors who had pushed her to limits she never imagined. The same instincts honed in secret now guided her through a civilian crisis. Her hidden past had prepared her for a moment like this, though she had never expected it to arrive in a commercial airliner, over Texas, with ordinary passengers oblivious to the storm they were surviving. Her eyes scanned the horizon. Clouds churned, streaked with sunlight, painting the sky in shades of gold and gray. Knew the descent and landing would require every ounce of skill she possessed. She ran mental simulations at lightning speed, calculating glide angles, flap positions, and runway approach vectors. Each adjustment was precise, deliberate, and practiced, yet executed as if on instinct alone. Passengers began to notice the difference. Their fear shifted into awe as they glimpsed the controlled precision, the unshakable calm of the woman piloting their fate. Did not speak much now, letting her actions communicate competence and control. The plane responded to her guidance flawlessly, gliding steadily through turbulence. For the first time since takeoff allowed a private acknowledgement, she was fully in her element. Civilian pilot or not, the skills she had once hidden were alive, decisive, and more than sufficient. The crisis had become a stage for her mastery, a proving ground where instinct, training, and courage converged. And she knew deep down that the true test, the final descent, the landing, was still ahead. Collins maintained a steady grip on the yoke as the aircraft cut through the sky. The sun shimmered off distant clouds, but turbulence intermittently rocked the plane. Every second demanded her complete focus. Passengers whispered nervously, eyes wide, gripping seat edges, unaware that the woman in the cockpit was executing maneuvers far beyond the scope of a typical civilian pilot. She was alone, with only her training and instinct as allies. The radio crackled. "Flight 329, we don't know if you can handle this alone. Procedures require a co-pilot. We have no emergency protocol for this." a strained voice said from ground control. Exhaled silently. She had anticipated skepticism. Civilian controllers were trained for routine deviations, not for a scenario requiring split-second improvisation by a single pilot. "Understood," she replied, her tone calm yet firm, every word precise. "I am in control and maintaining all flight parameters within safe limits. Recommend clearing runway immediately for emergency landing." Silence followed, punctuated only by the hum of engines and the occasional passenger murmur. Ground control hesitated, unsure how to respond to a pilot who sounded both professional and unnervingly confident. Ignored doubt. She had flown jets that physics, landed under extreme conditions and made decisions where hesitation meant disaster. This was merely another emergency, a different setting, same principles. She adjusted the autopilot slightly, calculating glide slope and descent speed. Every gauge, switch, and warning light was read, analyzed, and acted upon within seconds. Turbulence worsened as a sudden gust buffeted the wings. Compensated instantly, banking slightly, nudging the throttle, maintaining course. Each motion was deliberate, precise, almost dance-like. Passengers pressed their faces to the windows, feeling the plane sway but trusting the pilot's unseen mastery. Mark's unconscious form rested against the controls, monitored him carefully but had to prioritize the aircraft. Every minute she delayed landing increased risk, yet she remained composed, drawing upon the instincts forged during her time in top-secret military missions. She had landed test jets on aircraft carriers, maneuvered in storms designed to ground other pilots, and survived emergency simulations where failure was certain. Now, those skills governed her every action. The radio buzzed again. "We still need confirmation. Flight 329, are you sure you can land safely?" "Yes," said her voice unwavering. "I am guiding the aircraft to the designated runway, all systems under control." Her confidence, though unnerving to the controllers, began to shift the tone. It was not arrogance, it was precision and clarity under pressure. She reviewed approach angles, calculated crosswinds, and mentally rehearsed every possible emergency procedure she might need. Landing a commercial plane alone had never been on a civilian syllabus, yet military experience had prepared her for exactly this: improvisation under life-or-death pressure. Passengers, sensing her control, began to relax slightly. Mothers held children, a businessman exhaled slowly, and whispers turned to tentative trust. Didn't speak much. She didn't need to. Her calm actions communicated more than words ever could. Every adjustment she made reinforced confidence that survival was possible. She checked her instruments again. Altitude steady, airspeed perfect, glide slope calculated. The runway lay ahead, now visible through the clouds. Allowed herself only a moment of acknowledgement. She had commanded, stabilized, and guided the plane through a crisis that would have overwhelmed most pilots. But the true challenge, the final descent and landing, loomed, demanding flawless execution. Her fingers tightened on the controls, mind sharpening further. Ground control's doubt had been a hurdle, but she now commanded authority over the situation. The next few minutes would test every ounce of skill, courage, and calm she possessed. The stage was set, was ready. The runway stretched beneath Collins like a distant ribbon, barely visible through the haze of clouds and gusting winds. Turbulence tossed the plane lightly, and the engines hummed steadily, almost impatiently, as if aware of the gravity of the moment. Eyes were fixed ahead, scanning every instrument, every gauge, every subtle variation in air pressure. This was no ordinary landing. It was a test of instinct, precision, and nerves honed by years of elite military training. Passengers gripped their armrests, a mixture of fear and awe etched on their faces. Whispers traveled through the cabin, their tension palpable. They sensed something extraordinary, though none could articulate it. Calm, measured commands offered them reassurance. "Remain seated, keep fastened, follow instruction, we will land safely." Her voice, steady and authoritative, seemed to slice through the panic, commanding attention without the slightest hint of fear. She adjusted flaps, calculating descent angles with meticulous care. The autopilot was engaged, but she monitored every movement, every subtle response of the aircraft. Clouds swirled violently, gusts pressing the wings. Compensated instantly, nudging the yoke, adjusting throttle, and correcting minor deviations before they could escalate. Years of F-22 simulations and emergency maneuvers surged to the surface, guiding her hands and mind. This was instinctual, precise, and elegant in its execution, a choreography of control in the face of chaos. Mark remained unconscious, slumped over the co-pilot seat. Kept one eye on him, but her primary focus was the runway. The landing approach required exact alignment, perfect speed, and flawless timing. One miscalculation, one delay, could spell disaster. She ran mental simulations at lightning speed, predicting crosswinds, evaluating drag, and recalculating glide slope. Every adjustment was executed flawlessly, as if she were conducting a symphony of engineering and instinct. Ground control's voices crackled nervously over the radio. Flight 329, you're approaching the runway. Confirm status. We are ready to clear emergency teams. Confirmed, replied, her tone calm yet unwavering. Landing trajectory stable, maintaining glide slope, runway cleared. Passengers shifted, craning their necks toward the windows, catching glimpses of the approaching tarmac. Murmurs rose, blending fear and anticipation. Ignored it, focusing solely on her instruments and the subtle cues from the environment outside. The wind gusted sharply, buffeting the plane. She compensated, smoothly adjusting controls, guiding the aircraft with precision honed over years she had kept hidden from the world. The plane descended steadily, engines humming in perfect harmony with her maneuvers. Monitored vertical speed, airspeed, and altitude simultaneously, each adjustment calibrated to perfection. Passengers clutched their seats, silent prayers barely audible over the cabin hum. Allowed herself only one private acknowledgement. She was in complete command. Civilian pilot or not, she was fully in her element, her hidden training revealed in a life-or-death performance. The runway grew larger in the windshield, edges crisp and precise. Aligned the aircraft perfectly, correcting for minor deviations caused by gusting winds. She extended the landing gear, the familiar mechanical sound echoing like reassurance. Flaps deployed fully, and she reduced throttle with exact timing, ensuring a smooth glide. A shiver of anticipation passed through the cabin. Passengers stared in silent awe, realizing they were witnessing a landing of extraordinary skill. Hands remained steady on the yoke, eyes sharp, mind entirely focused. The final few hundred feet were critical, but she remained undeterred. Every instinct, every memory of secret missions and test flights converged in this singular moment. With a gentle but decisive motion, the plane touched the tarmac. Tires screeched against the runway in controlled friction, the aircraft rolling perfectly along the center line. Guided it smoothly to a complete stop, maintaining composure as applause and murmurs of astonishment swept through the cabin. For the passengers, the terror had ended. For the real challenge was only beginning. The tires screeched against the runway, a sharp, metallic song of relief and triumph. Collins kept her hands steady on the yoke, easing the plane to a smooth stop. The aircraft rolled perfectly along the center line, a testament to her unparalleled control. Silence enveloped the cabin for a heartbeat before it erupted into applause, gasps, and tears. Passengers stared, wide-eyed, half in disbelief, half in awe. Mothers clutched children, straightened in their seats, and a few whispered prayers escaped lips previously frozen in panic. Exhaled slowly, allowing herself the smallest acknowledgement of relief. She glanced at Mark, unconscious but stable, and then back at the instruments. Every dial indicated success. Every system had responded flawlessly under her command. This was no ordinary landing. It was a controlled miracle at 30,000 feet, executed entirely alone. She could feel the adrenaline ebbing, replaced by a quiet satisfaction, tempered with exhaustion. Ground crews sprinted toward the aircraft, eyes wide with disbelief. Emergency personnel rushed to Mark, while other staff moved to secure passengers. Their questions tumbled over one another, frantic, amazed, and incredulous. How did you manage this? Are you a military pilot? Was anyone else flying? Offered measured responses, keeping attention on the passengers and safety. Her public persona remained calm and professional, hiding the extraordinary skill that had just saved lives. In the cabin, passengers clutched one another, tears streaking faces, applause continuing. Some whispered their amazement, others offered quiet thanks. One young boy, no older than 10, peered at eyes wide. "You're like a superhero," he whispered, voice trembling. Smiled faintly, hiding the depth of her experience behind the mask of a civilian pilot. She had saved the flight, but recognition was not her goal. Precision, control, and survival were reward enough. Outside, cameras clicked, news crews began filming, and a crowd gathered at a safe distance. Aviation enthusiasts speculated wildly about what they had just witnessed. Social media would explode within hours, debating the identity of the miracle pilot. Yet remained grounded, both figuratively and literally. She stepped out of the cockpit calm, eyes sharp, observing the chaos she had orchestrated into order. Mark was stabilized by paramedics, groaning but alive. Allowed herself a moment to finally release tension in her shoulders. The passengers disembarked, murmuring their gratitude, their respect growing into fascination. No one knew, yet, the full extent of the woman who had guided them safely from sky to earth. Then above the airport, a formation of F-22 jets appeared on the horizon. They descended silently in perfect alignment, engines humming with the low growl of precision engineering. His breath caught not in fear but in recognition. She had flown alongside these aircraft before, trained with these pilots, known their rhythms and tactics. They were her squadron, long thought forgotten in her civilian life, returning to acknowledge a skill few had ever truly known. A crackle came over the radio, faint but unmistakable. "Valkyrie, well done." Froze. That call sign belonged to her alone, used only by those who had trained with her in the most secretive operations. Her pulse quickened, not from panic but from a rare, unspoken pride. Her past and present collided in that moment. Ground crews and passengers watched by the formation overhead. The jets performed a near-silent salute, a choreographed demonstration of recognition that required no words, allowed a faint, private smile. The acknowledgement was hers alone. Her life as a civilian pilot continued, but now a hidden chapter of her existence had revealed itself, without warning, without fanfare, and yet undeniably triumphant. In the terminal, reporters scrambled for answers, passengers gawked, and social media feeds exploded, but walked away quietly, calm and composed, already planning her next flight. The world had witnessed a miracle, though few would understand the full story. And somewhere above, in the form of those F-22s, a silent affirmation reminded her, true skill never dies. It waits for the moment it is needed most. Collins stepped off the plane, her hands still trembling slightly from the adrenaline of the landing, though her face remained composed. Passengers crowded around, offering thanks, applause, and wide-eyed amazement. Cameras flashed relentlessly, recording the woman who had executed the impossible, but barely noticed. Her attention had shifted skyward. Above the airport, the formation of F-22 jets hung in near-perfect symmetry, engines producing a low, ominous hum. Their presence was precise, disciplined, and unmistakable. His breath caught in recognition. She had trained with these pilots, flown alongside them in secret missions, and earned their trust through countless high-stakes exercises. The memory of long days in simulators, emergency drills, and tactical flights flooded back. These were her peers, her squadron, elite aviators who had long been part of her hidden past. Then the radio crackled faintly, the voice calm but charged with meaning. "Valkyrie, well done." Froze, her call sign. Only her former squadron had ever used it, a name earned through precision, courage, and skill above all else. The word carried weight, reverence, and acknowledgement. In that single phrase, her past and present converged. The ordinary civilian pilot world knew her as Collins. The elite military world knew her as Valkyrie. And now both realms intersected in an extraordinary, almost surreal moment. Ground crews and passengers watched the jets with awe, unaware of the depth of meaning in that call sign. The pilots performed a near-silent aerial salute, dipping and climbing in perfect synchronization. Every maneuver was deliberate, a testament to discipline and respect. To any observer, it was a spectacle. It was personal affirmation. She allowed herself a faint smile, acknowledging the rare and profound approval that came from those who truly understood the caliber of her skill. Her mind raced briefly, reviewing the events that had brought her here. The collapse of her co-pilot, the chaos in the cabin, the radio skepticism from ground control, all moments that could have ended in disaster. Yet, through training, instinct, and unwavering focus, she had guided the plane to safety. The F-22s above were a symbolic recognition, not of fame or medals, but of mastery and courage. Her secret life as an elite pilot had quietly intersected with her civilian existence, creating a moment of undeniable truth. Passengers began to murmur excitedly, some pointing to the jets overhead, others speculating wildly about the miracle pilot. Maintained her composure, keeping her personal identity cloaked. She did not seek accolades. She had never sought them. The acknowledgement from those who truly mattered, the pilots who had shared her most dangerous missions, was enough. This was validation without spectacle, recognition without need for headlines. As the F-22s climbed higher, fatting toward the horizon, felt a rare sense of closure. The emergency had been a crucible, testing not only her skill but her ability to remain composed under extreme pressure. The landing had proven her mastery, but the acknowledgement above cemented her place in a lineage of excellence she had never publicly flaunted. Her past, once hidden, had found its voice. Ground crews and emergency teams continued their work below, but allowed herself a private moment of satisfaction. The passengers, still buzzing with gratitude, began to disembark, leaving behind echoes of wonder and relief. Had returned to civilian life physically, but her spirit soared with the F-22s above. For a fleeting moment, she allowed herself to feel the rare, profound pride that came with silent acknowledgement from those who truly understood her worth. The call sign lingered in her mind, Valkyrie, a whisper, a legacy, and a reminder that true skill cannot be hidden forever. Somewhere in the clouds above, her past had recognized her present, and in that recognition found an unspoken affirmation of everything she had endured, trained for, and quietly mastered. The airport buzzed with activity, a chaotic mix of emergency crews, ground personnel, and media personnel clamoring for information. Cameras flashed relentlessly, reporters shouted questions, and passengers recounted the miraculous landing with wide-eyed amazement. Collins moved through it all with quiet composure, her steps measured, her face calm. She answered questions politely, deflecting attention from herself while ensuring the focus remained on the passengers' safety. But inside, her mind was already processing the extraordinary chain of events she had survived. Mark had been stabilized and was recovering under medical supervision. The passengers, though shaken, were unharmed, and their gratitude was overwhelming. Some approached directly, shaking her hand or hugging her, whispering words of awe and admiration. "I've never seen anything like that," one passenger said, tears in her eyes, smiled faintly, acknowledging their thanks but keeping her secret tightly guarded. She had no desire for celebrity or accolades. Her skill had been its own reward. Yet above the commotion, the memory of the F-22 formation lingered, vivid and unmistakable. The jets had flown with precise, disciplined synchronization, delivering a silent yet unmistakable acknowledgement. "Valkyrie, well done." Only a select few could recognize the significance of that call sign. Felt a rare warmth of validation, knowing that her hidden military past had intersected with her civilian present in a moment of extraordinary consequence. The acknowledgement was subtle but profound, far more meaningful than any public recognition. Media outlets swarmed, attempting to uncover the identity of the miracle pilot. Social media buzzed with speculation. Aviation forums exploded with admiration and theories, yet remained composed, navigating the attention with practiced ease. She had mastered chaos before, in simulators, in combat, in high-stakes tests where failure was unacceptable. This was simply another kind of challenge, managing public curiosity while maintaining the integrity of her hidden past. In the hours following the landing, the airport began to quiet. Passengers dispersed, and emergency crews completed their assessments, retreated to a quiet corner of the terminal, allowing herself a moment of reflection. She considered the journey that had brought her here, years of elite training, secret missions, the disciplined rigor of military life, and the choice to step away into civilian anonymity. Every lesson had prepared her for this moment. Every instinct, every drill had converged to save lives. The F-22 pilot's acknowledgement played over and over in her mind. It was more than recognition, it was a bridge connecting two halves of her life. Civilian pilot, elite military aviator, ordinary life, hidden legend. The convergence was rare, but it had happened in a way both beautiful and humbling. Realized that her skills, though once secret, could never truly be hidden from themselves. They were an intrinsic part of who she was. As evening fell, the sun dipped low over the Texas plains, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Looked out at the horizon, the sky streaked with gold and crimson. She thought about the passengers, the crew, and the unforeseen crisis that had tested her beyond imagination. She thought about Mark, still recovering, and the whispers of acknowledgement from her old squadron. And she thought about herself, a woman who had flown alone into uncertainty, guided by instinct, skill, and courage. Knew her life had changed, quietly but profoundly. She would continue to fly, to live as a civilian, but the memory of this flight, of the passengers saved, and of the F-22's silent acknowledgement would stay with her forever. Her story, though whispered in some circles and celebrated in others, was not about fame. It was about mastery, courage, and the ability to rise above fear when the moment demanded it. As the airport lights glimmered in the twilight, walked away from the tarmac, calm, composed, and undeniably transformed. She had faced the extraordinary and emerged unshaken, a hidden legend revealed in fleeting moments, yet destined to inspire those who knew her story. She was Valkyrie, and the sky would always recognize her.